warner Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from among themselves. So the disbelievers say, this is a strange thing. When we are dead and we and have become dust, shall we be resurrected? That is of our return. We know that we know that which the earth takes off them, their dead bodies, and with us in a book preserved. That is a book of degrees. Sadaqallahu Azim.
Thank you, Basha bhai. Zohaib, are we good to go now?
Yeah, sir. I'm ready.
Fantastic. So all the participants, I'm going to request you all to stop your videos. I will mute all of you. Please do pay attention. There is a lot of clinical tips today by Dr. Zohaib, and without undue delay, let me mute myself as well. Zohaib, the podium is all yours.
Thank you. We'll start.
Please.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. So topic for today, we named it as post-orthodontic therapy considerations. Actually, it's nothing but something about retainers, retention, relapse, stability after orthodontic treatment. So some introduction about retention, few statements given by few authors, prominent authors. It dates back to 1930s, as early as 1930s, where this retention was still a problem. As soon as the orthodontics started, retention became one problem. According to Dr. Opanim, he mentioned that actually retention and retainers, these are the main problems. These are the only problems in orthodontics. Dr. Han, one more person, he actually mentioned retention as the stepchild of orthodontia. Like that, so many other different views by different authors, terminologies are there. I'm not going to go into those that much theoretical aspect. But one more slide I want to share. People are very much familiar by the name Hawley. Dr. Hawley gave the famous retainer, Hawley's retainer, and he was actually having some problem with retention. He mentioned that if any one of them would take my cases when they are finished, retain them, and be responsible for their further progress, I would gladly give them half the fees. This was an overestimation. He was willing to give half the fees if someone is taking care of his retention. Okay. Before starting the topic proper, I want to give you a very much working kind of definition for retention by Dr. Moyers. Why I'm quoting Dr. Moyers? Because he is one of the person who wrote a textbook, apart from Dr. Graeber and all, totally dedicated to diagnosis. Like what we tell that diagnosing a case before jumping onto the treatment plan, what we are having with us is the main aspect of orthodontics. So what Dr. Moyers tells about retention is that it's maintaining newly moved teeth in position long enough to aid in stabilization and their correction. So actually what we meant by retention and retainers is that we want to maintain the teeth in their stable position. As soon as the appliance is removed after orthodontic treatment, sometimes, most of the times, it's not the stable position of the teeth. Teeth tends to move a little. They want to come to a convenience kind of bite where these teeth, because of eccentric forces, they assume a normal position. Sometimes there are numerous terminologies given to it. More than that, I also want to give a little bit clinical tips in between when I'm going through the slides, in between some clinical tips. Like this one shown over here, it's a quote by Dr. Mizrahi. He is of the opinion that the supporting alveolar bone, periodontium, tongue, lips, and cheeks all mature and change with age. And so the effect of these surrounding tissues on the dentition also changes. So why the main question comes, if you are doing orthodontic treatment and teeth tend to relapse, then what's the point of giving any type of treatment? So it's as if that any procedure you do in medicine or dental procedures, when you are doing, they require some amount of maintenance, right? So what Dr. Mizrahi is telling, that when the surrounding tissues, bone, muscles, all the soft tissues, they keep on changing. They are not stable as you age. So how come the teeth can remain stable at their one position? So they also tends to relapse. They also tends to move. Okay. something like what are the different types of retention. Again, I'm quoting Dr. Joondeph. He has done a lot of work on retention along with Dr. Riddle as well. These are very common things. That's why I thought that I'll include. Some of the cases, some of the types of malocclusions, they present with where they don't require any type of retention, right? Some malocclusions are where they require permanent retention. Some are there where they require moderate retention. So we'll see one by one all these malocclusions. Second thing is that whenever a patient comes to you, it's not just a single malocclusion. Most of the times it will be a combination of malocclusions presented. So the first type of retention is when there is no retention is required or limited retention is required. Most commonly in this are the crossbites. Now we already know why crossbites doesn't require any type of retention is because once we have jumped the bite, these teeth are retained on their own. But actually, it's actually a theorem given by Riddle that crossbites doesn't require much of retention, but it's an understatement. Crossbites correction won't require any retention provided that you have got a proper overbite. Overbite is required. When a proper positive overbite is there, crossbites won't, like, they don't tend to relapse. If proper condition presents with an open bite, there are again chances that the teeth can go to crossbites. Such things happens whenever there are primary dysfunctions of muscles. Mostly, many of the times it's the tongue which causes the problem, low positioning of the tongue, primary problems of the tongue. That also we will discuss later. Next are the blocked out teeth. Now, what are blocked out teeth? Blocked out teeth, by telling blocked out teeth, I meant palatal, most commonly palatal placed lateral incisors, or sometimes lower second premolars, they get locked inside. So those teeth, when we create space and when we align them, get into the alignment, there are high chances that they doesn't require any further retention. Next is interceptive procedures like serial extractions. Now, when we are mentioning about serial extractions, again, it itself is a different topic. Just to give you an insight, serial extractions means that we try to remove teeth before any severe type of malocclusion is created. Next is driftodontics. Now, there is slight difference between driftodontics and serial extractions. Serial extractions we do when a patient comes in the mixed dentition, we assess and we remove some selected teeth. It could be premolars, it could be deciduous molars or canines. So that is about serial extractions. What is driftodontics means? When the patient is still young, we tend to extract few teeth, we give holding arches, and we let the teeth drift physiologically on their own. So this type of treatment planning, when it's done, many a times it doesn't require any retention, or even if it's required, it requires limited retention. Again, it's a big topic, debatable topic, when to do, which cases to select and all. Next is when we require permanent retention. Most of the times it's when you try to expand. When we try to expand and our expansion is so much that the long axis of the teeth are outside the confines of the arch width, that time permanent retention is required. If we try to expand the lower arch, there are high chances that again the teeth will tend to roll back. So that time expansion, if we are doing expansions in that way, permanent retention is required. Particularly in cleft cases, if I point out, it's almost always when the maxilla will be collapsed, we try to expand within, it will be within few hours time when the maxilla will collapse again if we don't try to retain it. Next is severe rotations. We already know that rotations are notorious, spacings, all these are very notorious to relapse back. Primary muscle dysfunction, already told about the uncontrolled muscle activity, and engram is set into the brain, it becomes habitual, slowly it changes to a muscle activity where it becomes so severe that there are very much deleterious effects on the dentition. Next is the periodontally compromised dentition. Obviously, when the support of the teeth is not there, there are high chances that they will move with even with lighter forces like the masticatory forces, swallowing forces and all. Apart from all these which I have mentioned, rest of the malocclusions in between and the combination ones comes under moderate retention. Now, next is why retention. Why retention is required? So you can you can in other terms you can tell what are the causes of relapse. Why a dentition tends to relapse back after correction. So first can be the reorganization of gingival and pedial fibers. We'll get to it. What happens that when we try to, we'll take an example of if the teeth is rotated, we try to derotate it. Now what happens when the tooth is in a rotated fashion, the gingival fibers, the pedial fibers are arranged in a particular pattern. When you try to derotate, it takes time for them to reorganize. So again, there are different studies which tells different time periods for pedial fibers to reorganize. It starts from 1 month up till 1 year. They mentioned that some tension will be remaining in the pedial fibers as well as the gingival fibers. Gingival fibers, one study tells up to 40 weeks also it takes, particularly the supracrustal fibers, to reorganize. Next is the unstable position of the teeth. When we are treating the teeth, we left the teeth in such a position which is unstable for that particular tooth or group of teeth. Those conditions also, there are high chances of relapse. And these are the cases, if you want to retain the position, you have to give lifetime retention. Now, there are different types of retainers. We'll get to those also. Next is the growth changes. If we try to, if we are treating a case and the patient is in growing period, like for consideration, we'll just for discussion sake, we'll tell that till 18 years. So till 18 years of age, there could be some amount of growth remaining, if not the active growth. And most commonly the lower mandibular, the late mandibular growth. So what happens, the lower incisors, they tend to crowd. They get crowded very easily. And particularly when the patient is somewhere around 17, 18, maybe 19, up to 20 years, there are high chances that these teeth, some imbrications will be seen. Next is the bone adaptation. Now, what do we mean by bone adaptation is the trabecular pattern. We want the trabecular pattern is such that when orthodontic forces are applied to the teeth, the same is transferred to the periodontal ligament, the whole periodontium, including alveolus. The trabecular pattern changes. It becomes parallel to the forces being applied. As soon as we remove orthodontic forces, these trabecular pattern, again, they try to become upright to 90 degrees. They want to become perpendicular. So this change also requires some time. Next is the muscular forces. Now, when you are trying to treat a malocclusion, the muscular forces, the muscles are adapted to a particular position of teeth. For them to adapt, for them to become habitual in that position, it takes time. And if it turns up into a deleterious habit, then it becomes even more difficult to retain. Next, and the last one, you can consider it as the eruption of third molars. That there has been a lot of debate about eruption of third molars and lower incisor imbrications. Numerous theories, numerous studies are there, but if at all it causes crowding, it should be considered as a very minor factor and should not be given that much consideration. Most of the times it happens because of late mandibular crowding. Okay. So what are the principles of retention? Here I want to discuss mainly about the periodontal ligament. What happens during normal mastication, periodontal ligament stabilizes the whole dentition. Something called as passive stabilization, active stabilization of the periodontal ligament. So what happens when we strap up the whole arch? It means when we place a fixed appliance into the patient's mouth, this stabilization property of PDL is lost. So to regain this property, for PDL to regain this property, we don't want any rigid appliance in the mouth. If the teeth are all strapped up with a rigid appliance, there won't be any recovery of stabilization of the PDL, right? So to regain this, you have to have a retention period. Now retention period is very different one. PDL wants to reorganize, that is, it wants some movement of the teeth. At the same time, muscular forces and others which we have discussed, if you left teeth as it is, they will tend to move the teeth like to its original position. So a balance has to be gained. So what they try to do, you have to provide retention by a non-rigid type of appliance, maybe a flexible type of retainer. Appliance means I meant retainer. So your retainer should be made up of a flexible wire if at all you are using a fixed retainer, and removable retainers already we know that it's not a rigid appliance if it's not holding the teeth completely, right? So this is the main principle of retention. As I have mentioned, masticatory stimulation of PDL promotes fibers reorganization, right? So during retention period, we have to tell the patient to remove removable appliance if the patient, we have given a removable retainer while eating. So removable appliance or the removable retainer is not required when the patient is eating, because we want some amount of movement for PDL to reorganize. So remove retainer while eating, and rigid retention should be avoided. Okay, one more clinical tip is retention should be considered and often decided at the time of diagnosis and treatment planning. As soon as the patient walks in, you diagnose the patient, you examine the patient, you come to a diagnosis. You have to assess all beforehand only what type of treatment is required for the patient. Why it's important? Because patient will be asking you a tentative date, how many years, how many months you are going to finish. So you have to include your retention period also as an active treatment itself. If you are telling the patient that I'm going to remove your braces, your brackets within a year, and after that nothing is required, it's actually understatement. You should tell that some amount of retention will be required. You have to come back to your dentist, your regular dentist. You have to come after maybe after 3 months, 6 months, for us to see how the retention plan is, like how they are managing the retention plan. Okay, we discussed about like unstable positioning of the teeth. Now this is again some hardcore orthodontics, but I thought that I'll give you a little bit insight about it. Where to finish the positioning of lower incisors. Now this is a very big debated topic again. It started with Tweed when he gave his diagnostic triangle. I think everyone knew about it. What he used to tell that lower incisors should be 90 degrees. They should be upright over the mandibular plane, right? He didn't took many things into consideration, mainly the facial pattern, right? So then again, different authors came. They kept on giving their own opinions in that sequence. Even Steiners gave APOG line. Before that also Riddle was there, and even Downs have propagated, Ricketts have propagated about APOG line, that we have to see A point and Pogonian line where your lower incisor edge is lying. Values range from 2 mm to up to 6 mm. So this is one thing where if at all you are inclining your incisors forward or backwards, these are few guidelines. Then new controversy was people thought that it's not the lower incisor which you have to think of. You have to consider upper incisor angulation. Based on upper incisor angulation, you have to position your lower incisors. In that sequence, even Steiner started where he gave his Steiner sticks. We were taught about Ricketts' facial axis. He actually started taking facial growth pattern into consideration, where he is telling whenever you start your treatment, at least you have to, when you are ending the case, you have to have your long incisors, incisors long axis should be parallel to the facial axis. So you have to end in this pattern. Right? How we'll get to know that when we are ending the treatment, it's going to be parallel to facial axis? We generally take near end treatment lateral cephalogram. If some torquing is required, we give torque in the wire, and we try to end this pattern. So what it tells that this is the normal growth axis. If you make your incisor parallel to this growth axis, it will be more stable. And based on that, you can arrange your lower incisor. Okay. Next big topic is lower intercanine width. Now, one more theorem of retention tells that particularly lower intercanine width should not be changed. Now, we all know if we are extracting and retracting any particular type of malocclusion, it's not possible to maintain intercanine width. It's just in books. We cannot maintain intercanine width. They will tend to change. But the next question is then how much? How much you can change? Then again, so many authors, they keep giving their views. Like Dr. Ricketts gave in his interview, he told once that up to 3 mm is still okay. It's considered like still you can retain them. Other authors were of the opinion that you have to see the width in the premolar and canine region, mainly the premolar region. Everyone knew about Ashley Hove's analysis where they mentioned out that if expansion can be done or extraction is required at all. So based on that, if our basal bone is wide, we can afford to expand or maybe increase intercanine width. If it's not wide and if it is narrow, there are high chances that they will relapse back, and in those cases we require permanent retention. Okay, one more clinical tip. If we are when we are doing orthodontic treatment, they mentioned that orthodontic control of tooth position and occlusal relationships must be withdrawn gradually and not abruptly if excellent long-term results are to be obtained. So what we mean by this, when we are doing orthodontic treatment, suppose we achieved a type of tooth movement, right? Suppose, again, we'll take example of derotation. So what they mentioned, as soon as we try to derotate a rotated tooth, we don't have to remove the forces immediately. It should be kept in that particular position at least for few visits or at least for a visit, so that it will get a chance to adapt to that position. If we immediately remove orthodontic forces as soon as we achieved our results, there are high chances that it will relapse back immediately, even when the orthodontic appliance in mouth, right? So we have to withdraw them gradually. Maybe you can reduce the force levels. Maybe if elastics are used, you have to use it intermittently, something like that. Okay. Next are the types of retainers. Could be removable retainer or fixed retainers. In removable retainers, most common type is the Hawley type. Now, Hawley's retainer dates back to 1920s. It's that old. It was nothing, just a labial bow. He started using short labial bow. That time C clasps were there. Then slowly Adams gave his clasp and they added Adams clasp to it. One more modification can be that in place of short labial bow, you can give a long labial bow. Why long labial bow? Because sometimes when you give a short labial bow and if it's an extraction case, there are high chances that extraction spaces might open because of the crossover wire. Those cases where non-extraction treatment, non-extraction cases are there, you can use short labial bow. In extraction cases, maybe there is one more modification where you can directly solder the arm of labial bow to the bridge of the Adams clasp. Next, one more is the fitted labial bow. Now, if we started with teeth were in rotations, they were rotated, imbrication was there, or some proclination was there. Those cases, maybe you can think of giving fitted labial bow also. Now, fitted labial bow goes something like that. It goes, this wire goes into the indentations of each and every tooth, and this type of bow we call fitted labial bow. So it retains the positioning. Now, one more thing I want to point out in this photograph, what it's showing is that we have given a removable appliance. This is the acrylic extension. Now they have removed some amount of acrylic from the posterior teeth, right? So why they have removed, and anteriorly nothing is there, right? So it depends upon what type of tooth movement you have performed, right? But at least, even if you are giving a Hawley's retainer, lingual side, at least 2 mm of relief should be there. Why? Because we want teeth to settle, posterior occlusion to settle, right? If it doesn't settle properly, there are high chances that anteriorly you will see some changes in the overbite, right? So for allowing teeth to settle, you can give relief in the posterior region, right? Okay. Next is the wraparound retainer. This is a better kind of retainer in routine orthodontic cases if we are giving this, because it covers full dentition, even the posterior teeth. But relieving the posterior teeth holds true for this also, if at all you want some adaptation, right? Again, it depends upon what type of malocclusion we started with, where we are ending. Even anterior bite plane can be incorporated in this area, and even in the Hawley's type of retainer. We will get to know which all the cases where anterior bite plane is required. Okay. Now, one terminology given by Dr. Profit was active retention. And for that, they had one spring retainer or the clip-on retainer. What they meant by this is, if during post retention period, if we see some amount of imbrication, that time we can give this type of retainer where we can cylinderize these incisors where imbrication happened, and we can take an impression. In that impression, we can rearrange these incisors as we do in Kessling setup, and that position we can fabricate this type of retainer. It's nothing but a labial bow and a crossover wire. Crossover wire again goes to the lingual surface of these teeth, and over that acrylic is placed. So it's just 3 to 3 retainer, and it's an active retainer because when we adapt this retainer in an ideal position, and when the patient wears this retainer, there are high chances that teeth will align on its own, provided you have done interproximal stripping or cylindrization properly. Okay. In that same scenario, one more appliance, very old appliance, is Kessling tooth positioner. Now, this Kessling tooth positioner is a monoblock appliance. You can see for upper and lower both, this is a monoblock appliance, right? This was introduced by Dr. Kessling mainly after finishing with Begg appliance, because Begg appliance was not as good in finishing a case. So they used to use this monoblock appliance for occlusal settling. It was a very good appliance, and occlusal settling used to happen very nicely with such monoblock appliances. But again, it requires active retention time. Patient has to wear it for an extended period till the teeth arrange itself. Okay, the recent ones are the invisible retainers. Most of the times they are made up of polyvinyl chloride. Now there are different materials available, and the thickness ranges from 0.5 to 1.5 mm. Thinner the tray, better will be the compliance by the patient, right? But most of the times there are high chances that they will get torn off, but since they are removable appliances, there are other advantages and disadvantages associated with them. In that same sequence comes the Essex type of retainer. Now this Essex type of retainer is nothing but a brand name given by Dr. Sheridan, and sometimes they used to give it from 3 to 3, sometimes covering all the teeth, maybe sometimes till first molars also, till first molars only they were included. So what are the different advantages of such type of retainers is that it can, first thing is that it can be given in all types of malocclusion, right? So if you are using a thinner dimension tray, you can give in almost all types of malocclusions after treatment. Particularly if you are giving in an open bite case, what happens when you give such type of trays, patient again will, the bite will become shallow. So that time you have to trim, you have to take, you have to check where are these prematurities. Maybe you can use articulating paper, and you have to make hole in those particular areas. I'll show you those. I'll tell you what are the main advantages. First is the aesthetics. Obviously, this is an invisible retainer, highly aesthetic. Patient love to wear these types of retainers. They provide effective retention. Several studies are done. They consider it as good as a Holly type of retainer or a fixed type of retainer. It can also correct minor imbrications. It can also work as an active retainer. We'll get to know that particular step as well. Then like this photograph, we can see an artificial tooth can be incorporated in these trays. If the person is having a missing tooth and for replacement some time is there, we can put an artificial tooth in that. Obviously it can be included in your Holly type or Beck type of retainer also, but these trays also such thing can be done, and it works as a space maintainer as well in that same time period. So these are the few disadvantages. These trays, they tend to prevent settling of the posterior occlusion. Very important. If you are thinking, and if the posterior occlusion is not settled properly during treatment, and we are expecting it to settle on its own in the post-retention period, better not to give this type of appliance. You can go ahead with the Holly type of appliance or maybe some other type of retainer, but not this, because it becomes difficult for it for posterior occlusion to settle. And as I have already mentioned, open bite cases, thick sheet may cause some problem. First thing is you use thin sheets, and even then if prematurities are there, make holes in that area. Suppose this area it's creating problem, you can cut this part and let the occlusion settle. Other disadvantage is that there are high chances that over a period of time these retainers, they break off, they torn, they get discolored. some smell starts coming out of it if the patient is not maintaining oral hygiene properly. Other problems of removable appliance, patient compliance is required. It can be misplaced, which is the most common thing. Patients, when the patients are wearing removable appliances, they, especially small kids, they should not engage in contact sports, bicycle riding, swimming, taking bath. That time they have to remove it. So those things hold true for all types of removable appliance. One more important thing about these types of trays are the environmental concerns. People are using such retainers left and right, but what about their biodegradability? Are they biodegradable or not? Different companies, different manufacturings, different materials are there. So some environmental concerns are also there with such types of retainers. Okay, now this is about in-house fabrication of such retainers. If we are having such Biostar machine or some vacuum form machine in our clinics, what we have to do, we have to have a cast, and that cast should be trimmed flat, right? And the long axis should be made 90 degrees. It should be straight, should not be more than 2 centimeters when we are having. So this is the recommendation. And then you have to block out all the undercuts over here. And then once you are having a tray, this photograph is showing a active type of tray. These broken lines are the tray lines. This is a composite blob. Suppose I want to move this tooth, I can give a composite blob over here. And when I'm adapting it, I can first take an adaptation on this tooth of the tray, and I placed a composite blob over here. Now, when I'm going to put this tray in the patient's mouth, it's get activated, and there are chances this tooth will get inclined in a palatal direction. So in those terms, you can actually correct some amount of imbrication, but very little amount of movement is possible with such trays. And again, it depends upon the strength of the tray, the thickness of the tray. There are different materials available for that. Okay. Next are the bonded retainers. We know different types of bonded retainers are available. Dr. Zachrison gave a classification about it. You can have canine to canine retainers. You can have just the connecting incisors, or maybe till premolars. Again, these retainers can be made up of rectangular wire, coaxial wire, braided wires. Nowadays, even commercial wires are available. Any type of wire you are using, one important thing is that it should be a soft wire. Now, when I'm telling it's a soft wire, it means it should be an annealed wire. Now, what is an annealed wire? You can see this photograph over here. This is actually an Australian wire made up of oven 4-inch. And how we have done this, how we have fixed this wire and all, I'll show you in next slides. First, we took this piece of the wire, we have to red heat it such that it becomes annealed. So once this is red hot, we can put it in electropolisher. It will become again this silvery color, and then you have to adapt it, and maybe you can bond it. Now there are again different methods of bonding. One of the method I'll show you. Okay, this is one of my innovation during our PG days. We used to find placement of these lingual retainers in the upper arch, particularly when diastema is there. It was very difficult for us. We always used to, we have to peep up, and it becomes difficult because retainer won't stay there. It will keep on coming out. And one more clinical tip before that I'll tell you. This was actually a retreatment. Like patient came after some months, and we have retreated it and then replaced this retainer. Otherwise, you are supposed to play, if at all you are placing a fixed retainer, you are supposed to place the fixed retainer before removing your fixed appliance. Why we tell or why we propagate this idea is because as soon as you remove the teeth, and if the tooth happen to be periodontally compromised tooth, there are high chances that their tooth will start drifting immediately. So first you place the retainer, a fixed retainer, and then you remove your labial appliance or whatever appliance you want to use. So what I'm showing over here is just a spring. It's a very simple type of spring. It's like tongs, nothing else. You can use a plier to hold it in that spring area. Insert the tooth in between the retainer. It will hold the retainer. Place your adhesive, cure it, and you can easily remove this spring. So what happens, how it is beneficial, even if a labial appliance is there, I don't need to use any floss and all. Floss technique is very common, but when labial appliance is there, it's not possible to place that floss that easily. You have to struggle to do it. Obviously you can do it, but it's difficult. So in those terms, if you are just having a small piece of wire, it will just take a few seconds only to make such type of a springs, and you can have in-house such a springs, and you can just place it and can very easily place these type of retainers. Okay, now this is one clinical tip. Now how we can assure that a permanent retention will be feasible for a patient, right? What we can do is first give a fixed lingual wire, as I have already shown. Over that you can take an impression, send it to the lab, get a vacuum formed or an invisible retainer made for your patient. So you see this scenario. This first I have placed a lingual retainer, then I got these trays prepared for my patient. Then for one more, I want to be doubly sure that my patient's dentition won't relapse back. What I'll do, I'll prepare one more Holly type or a Beck type of retainer, and I'll give even the dental models of the patient, post-treatment dental models to the patient. So this dental model plus this appliance, I'm giving it to the patient. Why I'm giving it to the patient? Because I'll be explaining the patient, if at all at any time these trays are getting lost, they are broken, torn off, anything, at least for the days when you are not able to contact your dentist, you can wear this type of appliance. Even if the dentist or the orthodontist is not in town, or the person has moved, that person or the patient is having this cast and they can get it again replaced, such type of trays. So this will make doubly sure that how we can have a permanent retention. At least from your side, you can do all these things if the patient is willing to pay for them. Okay. Next is what else we can do. Some adjuncts to enhance retention. Now we already know about frenectomy. Highly placed and abnormally placed frenum, generally it causes diastema, as you can see over here. Again, it's debatable when to do frenectomy, before treatment, after treatment. So that is a totally different topic. Next is the CSF, circumferential supracrustal fibrotomy, up to 2 mm of depth of the sulcus. You can give cuts, and these are the procedures, surgical procedures patients doesn't like much. But still, if some severe derotated tooth or teeth are there, those cases maybe you can go ahead with such type of minor surgical procedures. Next is gingival cleft removal. Now, what is this type of gingival cleft? You can see this is an extraction case. This is canine. This is second premolar. We are trying to move the teeth to close down the space. When the spaces are closing, when you reach very near or space is almost closed, you can see many cases you will see that such kind of clefts forms. Now, these clefts sometimes are nothing but the invagination of your gingiva along with the defect of bone. Why this happens? Because we are trying to close the extraction space very fast, right? Those are the cases where there are high chances that the relapse will occur. So these are the cases where we have to get surgically this gingival tissue removed, let the healing happen in this area, and then again resume slow closure of the extraction spaces. Again, next is the cylinderization. This it goes back to 1985, where William Rayleigh told that if you want stabilization or maximum stabilization for your lower incisors, cylinderize them. So cylinderization sometimes increase or enhance the retention of lower incisors. Okay, this is one more clinical innovation which I tried during my PG days. What problem I used to face is that it used to become difficult for me to do cylinderization in the posterior aspect, particularly in the posterior aspect, because if I'm using a hand, just these abrasive strips with hem, and I want to place it to the molar and I have to do cylinderization, or in the premolar region, it used to sometimes hurt patient's cheek. And if I'm using even a needle burr, it becomes difficult for me to see in the posterior region. So we used to prefer these abrasive strips. So what I did was that I just tried to use some type of flexible thing so that I can attach this abrasive to it and I can reach posterior region. So I took this suction tip, adapted it according to my needs, just made 2 holes, passed my ligature wire through it, and attached this abrasive strip to it, and then it was easy for me to use both in the posterior region, and even it becomes easy for me to do in the anterior region. It was nothing like a saw for me. Once I'm having a handle, it became like a saw for me, and with one hand only I can do it very easily, and with the second hand I can stabilize the dentation. Okay, now some special situations where we have to see how we can go ahead with the retention plan. If we present with deep bite, now again deep bite can be skeletal, dental, so many different issues are there to it. Whatever may be the bite type, whenever a deep bite case is there, it's better if you are giving a retainer with an anterior bite plane. Now this anterior bite plane should not be an anterior bite plane where generally you see posterior disocclusion. This, according to Dr. Profit, he mentioned it as a potential anterior bite plane and should be given at least until growth completion. If it's given till lifetime, that is the best thing what we can do, particularly in class 2 division 2 type of cases. So sorry. So what happens? This is the scenario when the patient, the treatment ends. Your anterior bite plane should be fabricated in such a way that the lower incisor should be touching it anteriorly. At the same time, there should not be any disocclusion at the posterior aspect. So when this type of retainer is fabricated, it's called as a potential anterior bite plane. If it gets disoccluded, there are again chances that you will create a new type of occlusion or maybe a malocclusion, right? So this type of retainer should be prepared for deep bite cases with potential anterior bite planes. Okay, now open bite cases. Open bite are very, very notorious to relapse, particularly if they are associated with vertical growth pattern, class 3 malocclusion. Very difficult. Anyways, if open bite cases are there, maybe you can give a retainer with posterior bite blocks where it will keep on exerting some amount of intrusive forces, like the mastic when you are patients, when you have given this type of appliance to the patient, some amount of these eccentric forces will be transferred to this appliance and in turn will be transferred to these molars as intrusive forces. So bite blocks you can give. You can even give anterior box elastics. I actually forgot to add that photograph. What you can do is you can add ball clasps to your appliance, and through that appliance you can just give box elastics to it, right? Then different types of functional appliances are available, open twin block, activator, bionator. You can give such type of appliance also for nighttime wear. High pull headgear is an optional thing. It can be given in patients of young age, but it's not tolerated well if you think patients are going to use it for an extended period of time. That in those cases, maybe you can give an open bite activator or a bionator. If the patient presents with an abnormal tongue habit, then you can even incorporate these tongue crips to your Holly type of appliance or maybe a Beck type of appliance. These are very much handy when tongue problems are there, or maybe if tongue problems are not there, maybe you can incorporate such appliances for a small, like for a very short duration, maybe for 6 months, and then you can discontinue such appliance and maybe you can go ahead with a conventional Holly type of appliance or a Beck type of appliance. Most important thing is if the patient doesn't want all these things, at least you have to give a SX type of retainer or an invisible retainer. Invisible retainer or SX retainers, they are almost universal to any type of malocclusion which you are treating. If you in case if you have treated a collapsed maxillary arch, that time when you are giving a invisible tray, it should be made up of a thicker material and it should be sturdy enough. Okay. Next is class 2 malocclusion. Now, if the class 2 malocclusions are treated with bite jumping, that is by using functional appliances or maybe by surgical means, most of the times they remain stable. But what about the dentition? In the bargain, if you happen to procline or move this lower incisor bodily, suppose. So what happens if it is moved in front by more than 2 mm, then a permanent type of retention is required, right? A fixed type of retainer, a retainer which has to be worn almost daily, at least for nighttime wear, right? If the patient is treated in his or her growth period, that time you have to continue your bite jumping appliance or a headgear for nighttime wear until growth completion. At least till 16 years to 18 years, you have to tell the patient to wear it. Otherwise, there are chances that it might relapse. It's we are not sure that it's going to relapse, but it might relapse. So better to have such kind of appliances for at least nighttime wear. Okay, class 3 cases. Class 3 is, again, it depends upon. Class 3 is due to what was the reason for it, what was the cause for class 3. If it is because of a narrow maxilla, which is the most common finding, initially the thinking was that almost always whenever class 3s are there, it's because of prognathic mandible. But when studies were done, it was not like that. It was mostly because of the small maxilla, or maybe a combination of small maxilla and a prognathic mandible. Those cases, when the mandible is notorious, there are high chances that it won't, there are high chances it will relapse back. So those cases, maybe one appliance was a chin cup appliance, but it was found that it doesn't provide that much of retention. As soon as you remove the appliances, a bounce back or a catch-up growth happens, and it changes its like from horizontal to a vertical direction. The growth of the mandible changes. So if it's a mild case, if it's a very severe case or a moderate case, there are high chances that relapse might happen. And you have to tell the patient beforehand only that there are chances that such things are happening. You have to go ahead with surgical line of treatment after growth completion. But if it's a mild case, you can give an FR3 appliance. It's a very handy appliance. Frankel appliance, nighttime wear, you can give it. Even twin block appliance, reverse twin block appliance you can give, or even the Kesseling positioners also help. Any of these appliances, whichever of your choice, you can use. Okay, this is very important. Whenever you are giving patients any removable appliance, any retainers and all, please provide boxes for them. This is one of the most commonly seen, that the patient tends to misplace them. They'll lose their appliance and they will come back to you after months and all with relapse and all, telling this reason. So better to have such boxes with you. You can place your clinic's sticker or something, and maybe if some patient's favorite cartoon and all, you can keep anything you can do for your own marketing. Okay, those were all the orthodontist factors which an orthodontist has to think they have to have in their mind. Now there are some patient's factors as well. Patient has to maintain his or her appliance throughout. All the precautions which a removable appliance carries are holding true for our removable retainers as well. Second thing is, you have to, from day one, you have to make sure that the patient is involved in the treatment. Patient should share the responsibility of keeping their teeth straight. This should be written, should be reinforced mostly, and to the patient's parents also, almost all the appointments. And maybe you can have a consent form ready for you, where you can take patient's signature, both pre and post you can do, and you can ask patients that it's your responsibility to retain them. And there are different guidelines available regarding the charges what you can ask for the patient to pay. Based on that, you can go ahead. But taking consent, informing patient about the retention period is must and should be informed and told to all the patients. And the bottom line goes like, if you want teeth to be stable in a particular position, it should be, the retention period should be lifetime. So to conclude, with conflicting views and a lack of scientific evidence regarding the causes of relapse, the most predictable and most effective way to ensure the stability of orthodontic treatment is probably a lifetime of retainer wear. So this is the bottom line. If you want your teeth not to move at all, you have to wear the retainers for lifetime. Or it could be a fixed retainer also, which can be placed. Okay, I would like to take this opportunity again to promote our book on comprehensive orthodontics. Something about the book, it contains all the different types of cases with the long-term retentions. Some cases are having retention up to 25 years, 27 years, something like that. And more than 500 cases we have included in this book. It's going to be a 2-volume book of somewhere around 1600 pages, and a lot of information is there. Since it's an atlas format, we tried to incorporate as much as we could learn from the case in the form of different question answers and other discussions. Even then, there are so many things which you can learn from a case if all the photographs are provided. So we have provided all the stage-wise photographs, pre-treatment to post-treatment, with clinical values and cephalometric values, with the long-term retentions and our clinical tips as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zohaib. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
If I could ask you to stop sharing your screen, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. So I'm going to bring in the panelist and the moderator in. Just a moment, let me go in. Now we're going to make this into a more interactive session. As I mentioned, I would like people to put forward their questions by themselves, if they could, preferably by raising a hand, and then I will unmute you and you would have a couple of minutes to put forward your question, and then the panelist and the speaker would take up the take the answers up for you. But I think Nadeem mentioned he wanted to ask a few questions. I'm just going to unmute Nadeem as well. Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Zohaib. That was absolutely amazing, because orthodontics is not my cup of tea, but I think I learned a lot about retention today, a lot about retention, to be honest. Excuse the voice, we have some car issues here. Right, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to let Dr. Basha Bhai put forward the questions. Thank you very much. And let's, yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nadeem. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Zahir. So nice to see you after a long time. Thank you, Dr. Zohaib. It was a wonderful talk, an excellent presentation. MashaAllah, really you're a pride to the young orthodontic society of our community. MashaAllah, we really, I'm really very happy whenever I see you and whenever your papers come up and whenever your name comes up in the textbook. It's really very nice. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So very good. And I'll start off with the questions over here. I think Dr. Nadeem, you're there? Dr.
Yeah, I'm there, Basha Bhai. Can you just go ahead with the questions posted?
Start off with your question, Nadeem.
Yeah, there are already few questions posted. You go ahead with that, then I'll come in.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just check. Yes. There's a question by Dr. Hosia. Any article published on efficacy of the innovations done by Dr. Zohaib mentioned in the slides, retainer holding pin and slenderization with suction tube holder, any pilot studies or any contemporary orthodontists use them? If as their insights, are the orthodontists in GDP house are welcome to use these tricks and share their experience?
Actually, I didn't try all those things. These were just for my help. We thought of innovating. People who can, I tried explaining them. These are very simple things. When you come up with problems on your own, you will have something to deal with them. You can try all these techniques, tips and all. But till now, we have not thought of anything publicly for more publication and all. Actually, we didn't thought in those terms. Maybe
I think you can put it on the JCO clinical tips. I think so. You can put that, Dr. Zohaib. JCO, they have the clinical tips, no?
I'll try.
Inshallah, you can publish that. Really, especially the slenderization thing was very good, very innovative.
Thank you, sir.
No, very, very handy, mashallah. It was good.
Zahir, what do you say about it, Zahir?
No, I think it's very good. I mean, we struggle a lot. I mean, as we all know, when we are using whether it is a strip or a metal strip, I mean, I find myself, it is you need to have at least 2 hands or someone to hold. This is like quite handy. I mean, the other appliances what we have is like it's quite expensive. I mean, what I used to have is like almost I paid 300 pounds, for a set of like 8 plates. I mean, it's quite expensive. So in this way, I mean, we have like something handy, innovative. I'm very keen to, do this, inshallah. It's nice to learn small handy tips on hand. And
yes.
very good presentation from Dr. Zaheb. I mean, I would like to say again, mashallah, it was very well put across and good, all the points covered, mashallah. So I'll leave it to you, Dr. Asim.
Yeah, next question is by Dr. Fayaz. Very good talk, doctor. Is it better to overcorrect the teeth in case of rotation as we expect some relapse?
Yes, sir. Actually, this talk we had recently with our professor also. This is an old view where the word overcorrection was used. If it's an open bite case, you end the case in deep bite. If it's a deep bite case, you open the bite and leave it. If it's a class 2 case, you make it class 3. Class 3 case, you make it class 2. All these things are correct, right? But these are again different views and all. Why we have corrected a particular, suppose a tooth was rotated. Why you have corrected a rotated tooth? Either of two things. Either because of function. Tooth was out of function. It was blocked in, it was rotated, or it was not looking good. Again, if you derotated to the other side, what was the point of correcting it? if at all you want to rotate it, you have to rotate it to a very less extent. Now, if I quote different authors, if you take older PEA brackets, what we use, they already have these inbuilt rotations. You need not to do anything. If you are using a Roth bracket, it on its own, it is having rotations in it. But if you see the recent brackets, MBT brackets, butterfly systems, all those systems, they don't have all these views. This itself is telling when you see the newer appliances, they don't have any overcorrections. It itself is telling that all those theories and whatever views were there, they were old views. People who used to promote those views, they are also not practicing the same over here. If we start from first type of appliance, which was the Beck type of appliance, they were of the opinion to do everything over correction because their appliance was inefficient in correcting everything. So if now we are having appliances which are very, very efficient in correcting malocclusions, now only problem is retention. So in a particular way, if we go, if our diagnosis is correct, our treatment plan is correct, our appliance selection is correct, our evaluation is correct, execution is correct, at the same time, there is no untoward growth, and the patient is following our instructions, there are high chances that there won't be any types of relapses.
What is your take on this, Dr. Zahir?
I mean, I agree with Dr. Zaheb. I mean, if you see the newer system which are coming nowadays, now what we are working with, like Insignia or the new bracket systems, whatever. I mean, they are very, very, very specific. I mean, we don't see hardly we see where we are over prescribed. In fact, we're going for the lesser the work, the minimum the change. I mean, that's what I would say. Overcorrection, yes, during the growth phase, like Dr. Zaheb mentioned, that is where we tend to look over. I mean, that is at the time of diagnosis. I mean, if you think, okay, fine, the growth is still there. For example, class 3, if I'm treating, if I want to, or even for example, class 2, so I will leave it for a bit longer and see if it goes back to class 3. I mean, that's what I do with the twin blocks. We tend to go give it to make a class 3 and then allow it to relapse. But if you're doing with our fixed functional appliance, I mean, fixed appliances, and we have very specific prescriptions and they're very, very more accurate, there is less need to overcorrect. I mean, this is a balance. So that's would be the...
Yes, I mean, I agree with you to some extent here. Because newer appliances, because we also started with Becks, we used to do a lot of overcorrection. Yes. But now that concept is not there, actually. You're right, actually. I agree with you.
Sir, one more point I would like to add, sir, that
yes, please.
When we discuss about malocclusions, we have to think that if it's a skeletal problem or dental problem. If we are just mentioning about rotation, it's a purely dental problem. What my personal opinion is, we should not try to overcorrect dental problems.
Yes.
If it's a skeletal problem, growth, age, patient is still growing, suppose a class 3 case, how Dr. Zahir mentioned, a class 3 case, maybe that time we can have an overjet, an increased overjet. So that we are letting our mandible to have some play to grow in that particular space. It should not be tried in dental problems. Now, if we are doing all these things in dental problems, again, there are chances that dental compensation will start happening. If I want to is there, I'll try to derotate. Again, some other type of dental compensation will start happening. So we should try to achieve proper alignment and try to finish it.
Okay. I think there's any more questions there? No, I don't think so. Nadeem, you can go ahead now.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, all the people out there. Assalamu alaikum, Zahir. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
A fantabulous presentation, Dr. Zohaib. Mashallah.
Thank you
I
very
think retainers is always a subject which is always missed by everyone. Even I think even the specialists also do miss that in the in the lot of cases when they have in their OPDs. Okay, my question is quite simple. Just forgive me if my questions sound quite novice. Why do we need removable appliance itself? Why can't we just settle with fixed appliance? When you happen to see the pros and cons of the removable, why not just settle with a fixed appliance? Why we have to give a removable appliance? Are you planning for some further correction in removable appliance, thinking that you're giving that appliance?
Sir, how I'll put this thing is, I'll start with a little bit theoretical part. How we started orthodontics. We started with a removable appliance, right? And innovation and in those days were to come to a fixed appliance, right? One more peculiar phenomena in orthodontics is that after every few years, history repeats itself. Again, we are going back to removable appliance as if we are doing Invisalign these days. Again, it's purely removable appliance containing all the advantages and disadvantages of removable. Why we didn't want it removable appliance in initial days was because of patient's compliance. Patient compliance is required in removable appliance, right? That's why we went ahead with fixed appliance. Now the patient doesn't want fixed appliance because it's difficult to maintain fixed appliance. Sometimes it becomes annoying. If I'm giving a lingual retainer to the patient from 3 to 3, I'll be telling patients not to eat hard food. I'll be telling patients not to eat sticky food. And like in our community, people are eating non-veg and all. Within 2 days, it will be out. Patient will gift you only. So what we try to tell is, if you are giving a permanent retainer, you can incorporate such type of invisible trays to the patient. How I mentioned, you give a removable fixed retainer, give a removable tray. At the same time, take impression, upper lower impression, make a Holly appliance, give it to the patient. Do 4 things. I'm not telling you to do one thing. Do 4 things. Charge the patient. You have given all your responsibility to the patient, right? Now you are free of it. Take a sign also from the patient. When we are taking like initial phase only, when we are taking consent signature from patients, that time include one more line that I'm going to do like this. I'm giving all the possible things, and it's not your responsibility. And you just have to come to me to see after every 3 months or so.
So basically, we are double safe by giving 2 retainers. That is what you mean to say. Okay.
Yes.
So just to add on to the point, you said it becomes the patient's responsibility to keep the teeth straight, and
Yes.
you take the sign that way. So bottom line, should we add that the doctor also should give straight teeth before taking out the brackets, so that the patient the dentist also should give them straight teeth before the patients maintain the said teeth to.
That I'm expecting orthodontists to take care of these things. I'm expecting them. See, again, sir, it depends upon, I'll tell you, sir, we tend to overthink that we can give ideal teeth and ideal inclination or angulation to teeth in all the cases. It's not possible. If I'm treating 100 cases, at least my outside cases, obviously outside cases, they are mutilated cases. I never consider themselves as orthodontic cases also. They are mutilated cases. It's like I have to think a lot about it because I am handicapped in those conditions. I cannot give ideal inclination and positioning of the teeth in all the cases. There are so many different ways. So in those circumstances, when I myself is restricted because of resources or maybe because of patients factors, what I can rely on is giving permanent retention. Even if my teeth are not in ideal inclination, but if the patient is vigilant enough that they are going to maintain the teeth in that particular position, let it that be. In those terms.
Right. Dr. Asim, you just stop me if anybody wants to ask any other questions, because I have a lot of questions. I'm going to.
Yes, I think Fayaz wants to continue. I'm going to unmute Fayaz, and then Nadeem, you can continue. Is that okay?
Nadeem, I just want to add a point of it. See, what happens is, one more thing is, any orthodontic treatment, the prediction is difficult. Okay. So the settling part of the teeth, the muscular part of the teeth, the growth patterns and all are quite different. So on that basis, giving an appliance that is removable appliance is always helpful. That's what I have noticed.
Well tolerated by the patients.
Yeah, well tolerated by the patient, and most of the time it takes care of the most of the problems which are there.
Correct, correct.
Okay, Fayaz, you can proceed.
Yeah, very nice presentation, Dr. Zohair. Indeed, we got a lot of information. Actually, I think a few years back, I was giving a lecture on a topic of prosthodontic management of orthodontic cases, where we encounter sometimes missing teeth while doing the orthodontic treatment. I had one similar case. When we talk about today's topic of retention, I had one case where we had two missing lateral incisors, and they had completed the case, and they gave it to me, and I placed 2 implants on bilateral maxillary lateral incisors and gave the implants. Now, when it comes to a question of retention now, I think it was a case of class 1 simple malocclusion with some rotations, I guess. So how do you go about retention in such cases where we have given we have replaced 2 lateral incisors in the maxilla with 2 implants? So what type of retention would you prefer, or don't need retention at all in such cases, because implant itself are stabilized, they don't move, and they might provide the additional support for the adjacent teeth of central and canines. So what is your view on this type of condition?
Sir, again, it depends upon sometimes it becomes difficult to imagine cases. If you could have posted some pre-treatment photographs, it might be helpful, but still I'll try to tell. Whenever I'm not having 2 lateral incisors, any space is there are chances that my other teeth will drift in that space, right? When the teeth are drifting, spacing will happen, right? Spacing is very, very notorious to relapse between central and canine, anywhere. Now, somehow we try to got the teeth into alignment, we match the midline, we maintain the space for lateral incisors, and implants are placed in the lateral incisor region. Now, the easiest and the most simple way is, after the implant placement, send back patient to your orthodontist and ask him to place a retainer from 3 to 3 over, because your implant is a rigid unit. Anything attached to this rigid unit, other teeth are not going to move at all, because it's not just about mesodistal movement. When you have moved a tooth, you have to think about labiolingual as well, right? Though we have placed implants and maintained that extraction space with our prosthesis, there are chances that central incisor and canines, they can move labiolingual as well, sir. So right, we have to think in those terms. If we want to maintain that thing, give a fixed retainer from 3 to 3 or maybe 2 to 2. That will take care of at least adjacent teeth. And yes, sir.
So basically, we want to prevent the labiolingual movement.
Yeah, you have to.
So we have to give the retention.
At the same time, we have to think one more thing, sir. At what age you have given the implants? Because again, there are different studies. By Dr. Nanda, one study is there. By Dr. Kapila, one study is there. Even by other authors, I'm forgetting their name. So many studies are there. Dr. Sheridan's study is there. What they saw, that if we give an implant, particularly in the anterior region, over a period of time, sometimes in a decade and all, up to 1 mm of difference can be there. Obviously, in 10-year period, if 1 mm of difference is there, it's hardly anything. But if you want to maintain that particular malocclusion not to be seen, give a retainer, 3 to 3 retainer, because that will be holding your incisors, central incisors, implants, and the canines. Now, there won't be any movement in this particular aesthetic region. That's what I meant. Second thing is, we giving implants in missing lateral incisors, it should not be given in, it should not be attempted before at least 18. If you are prolonging it to 20 or maybe above, it's better. But what happens in our scenarios, we get to know that some teeth are missing at a very young age. Patients coming to us somewhere around 12, 13 years of age, we'll get to know that these teeth are missing. We'll finish our orthodontic treatment, the patient is 14, 15 years old. And I am telling you to give implant at 18 years. So what about these 3 years? So again, there are different views. We were working on it was my own study. It was just in mind. I didn't get any other case to do like that. What we can do is you use these orthodontic TADs these days. I think people who are practicing orthodontics, they know that they use small TADs. Problem for implantologists is that if no tooth is there because of misuse, atrophy happens in that particular region, right, sir?
Yes.
If I'm having extraction space, atrophy will happen, bone level will decrease, correct?
Yes.
If I
Yes.
want to maintain that bone level, I have to put something in the bone. So that bone is, that thing is holding, like we are placing implants. So what we can do is, you can place your temporary anchorage device and place a crown over it.
Okay. Actually, very nice explanation, but you know, it's leading to a lot of doubts in my mind. But anyway, I don't want to go out of the
Sir, you
topic.
can ask, sir.
Okay. So I have one more question. I remember one theory that bone performs or bone works very well under pressure. That is Wooll's law, if I remember well.
Correct, correct, sir.
So if you take up this theory, is it possible to increase the density of the bone by orthodontic movement if there is a tooth missing? For example, if there is a lateral incisor missing, and after extraction, if the labial plate is gone and there is a thin bone there, is it possible to move the canine to the lateral and take it back again to the canine area and increase the density of the bone so that future I can replace it with an implant? That's my question.
Sir, that also.
Because why I ask this question is, I saw in one of the presentations, and we had some discussion. I know I'm asking very controversial or maybe leading to a lot of controversies and between two specialties, but these are all the some difficult scenarios we
That thing
encounter
is
sometimes.
possible. I'm not sure if a proper cortical plate can be formed, but obviously some type of osteoid and a woven bone kind of thing can be formed. And if you want to read more about it, there is a periodontal book by name Linde, I think. There is one chapter written by Dr. Bjorn J. Zackerson about orthodontics and periodontal interactions. There exactly what you are asking is given. And we in our department have already tried a similar thing where we tried for ridge development. We wanted few hopeless teeth to be extracted. We slowly extracted them, extruded them. And when the bone was forming, that time we removed because we wanted to place implants. Those case reports are there in our new book, which is about to come in the market. So all these things are covered already. It's what you are trying to tell, move a tooth and take it back. Why you want to take it back? Move the tooth, let it be there. You already have one space, place implant over there. Rest of the crown modification, our aesthetic team can do.
Yeah, move a tooth and take it back because it's a canine. So we want to, you know,
Doesn't matter.
replace it.
Doesn't matter.
Perfect. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. If it's a canine, only problem is that the gingival zenith will be too high.
Yes.
And you are having a pointed cusp. So what you can do is place your bracket little bit up. When you are moving this tooth, your tooth will tend to extrude. When the tooth is extruding, gingival margin will come down along with it. A ratio of 1:0.8. 80% it comes down. Right? When it comes down, you will have extruded canine like this. Chop off the cusp, make it like a lateral incisor. One more thing is, sir, it reminded me one more thing. It's always better. I think you will be knowing better that if you want to replace a tooth in the anterior region and it as compared to a posterior region, like a premolar. If I want to replace a canine or if I want to replace a premolar, it's always better to go ahead with replacement of premolar. So what I'm trying to tell is, in those cases, something called as premolar substitution. I can move my canine to lateral incisor region, my first premolar to canine region. I can replace one premolar. Now, all these things look very fancy, and you can ask me how you can move such a tooth from here to there. It doesn't happen like that, sir. In cases where retraction is required, we are not moving this tooth forward, we are moving whole segment backward.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
orthodontists can understand it better.
I got it. Yeah.
So those cases, you don't move those teeth backwards, you hold them over there. There are different devices and all. If you go into intricacies of proper orthodontics, everything is possible. They are doing all types of things, and placement of implants and retaining the teeth and moving the teeth is an integral part of orthodontics these days, sir.
Okay, and one last question, because you just said you can't replace the anterior teeth if the patient is, not under 18 years. I have done 2 cases in my experience. One case was 13-year-old girl, but she didn't require orthodontic treatment, well-aligned jaw, central incisor missing. So I think I placed an implant in 2014. It's been 6 years. She's now, I think, around 20 years. She's really, really doing well. And one more case was, I think, lower premolar for again for a child. For I think he was 11 or 12 years old. That's when I replaced it. Only these 2 cases I have, but I never had a problem. But again, I know that it's a debatable topic.
No, sir, I'll tell you one more thing, sir. When I'm telling 18 years, it's an overestimation. I'm just giving you an overestimation. Growth happening, growth cessation, especially in females. Sometimes in females, growth ceases as early as 12 years of age. So we don't know exactly. So since we don't know till what time, we are predicting ourselves. So we are just value, nothing else. There are cases you will see in our practice also, we see without any retainers also, when we give, nothing happens. Sometimes we do everything and all sorts of nonsense happens. So in orthodontics, particularly about retention, we don't know which case will relapse, which case won't relapse. You believe me, I have seen cases, 20-25-year-old cases, not even 1 millimeter tooth would have moved. And it's an extraction case. Treated by back very long back. But if I show you that case, you cannot tell me that which appliance you would have used. No retention, nothing. No retention at all. This is just an example, sir.
No, is it because
Thank
of
you so
proper
much,
technique used?
picture.
Is it because of proper technique used and long-term stability given during the treatment phase itself, rather than pulling out the brackets in hurry? Is that the case?
It depends upon so many other factors, sir.
Yeah.
Most important factor is patient factor, which we don't know how the biological tissues will respond to our movement. We are doing an empirical thing in all the patients.
True.
Who will respond, who won't respond, we don't know.
Yeah. I have one more question, Dr. Zohaib. You said about monoblock retainers.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So are monoblock retainers case specific? Is it ideally given during young age, say 15, 16-year-old also?
No, sir. Any case you can give monoblock. Like monoblock, when I meant monoblock, it means a tooth positioner, a Kesling tooth positioner. As people who practiced back, they know they used to give tooth positioner in left and right all the cases, because that was this appliance was included in active treatment. This is the finishing stage. Now, how we are having finishing stages in PEA, a different stage is there. Like that, in older, the appliance, actually BEG is an appliance which is in between removable appliance and a sophisticated PE appliance.
Yeah.
Those things. And but still, these tooth positioners, they are very good, very handy, should be handled in a proper way. And if the patient is compliant enough, they deliver very good results.
Okay. Does it hinder the growth phase or something? Because when you give the monoblock appliance in a 16-year-old or 17-year-old teenager, does it hinder the growth phase? Nothing. Just correct me wrong. The question might sound
I'll give you one example. 15-16 year is more. You should have asked me question when we are giving a suppose transpalatal arch or maybe a Nance arch in a 10-year-old, 8-year-old. Won't you think that will hinder transverse growth? But it doesn't happen. If you see the literature, it doesn't happen. Why it doesn't happen? Because you are giving it for a very less time. Okay.
Right.
And this one more thing I want to add. Sorry, Dr. Zohaib, that this monoblock retainers, sometimes I give this to this sleep apnea patients, adult patients. Excellent. It works excellently.
Good.
They keep modifying it somewhere here and there, and they give for sleep apnea patients. Actually, for apnea patients, you can give even normal twin block also. I don't know why so much different and sophisticated type. Yes. Scary looking appliances people give.
But I think the
CPAP machines also, when we give this appliance.
Yes.
Is a long-term use. I mean, I'm myself a apnea patient,
Okay.
So if I use a CPAP, but I was thinking for myself, if I have a twin block or something, but how long can I use it? I mean, a couple of months, but
it works excellently. Yeah. Many of my patients I am given it. Excellent, it works.
Okay.
So basically, retainers for life. That is what the orthodontists say. They swear by retainers for life.
Yes.
Right. And one more query is, I think once you have finished your case, during your retention phase, just before you want to take out your wire and the brackets, do you just remove the wire, hold the patient only with the brackets for a couple of months to see whether relapse is taking place or something, or you immediately go ahead with removal of brackets and start with the removable appliance?
See, sir, what I'll tell is, if you want to maintain your brackets over there and you want to remove your wire, such thing should be done only when you are giving a loose figure of 8 ligature everywhere. Because if any one tooth bracket gets dislodged and the patient swallows it, it will become again a new problem for you. Don't do all these things ever. I won't tell ever. Bracket should not be there in a mouth without any wire. Any wire means not just the base arch wire. I mean, even if you are giving at least a figure of 8 ligature, at least that thing should be there. Those things where what you are telling, again, this is a old concept by Dr. Mulligan. He used to replace wires. He used to remove the wire and he used to see what's happening. And then whatever, again, something bad happens, again, one new wire will go. Again, he will remove. So those things are already tried. People have tried them. They failed. Or even if they have not failed. See, one more thing is there, sir. Things which are easy and can be practiced by most of the people, only those are the things which are going to be survived. They are the things which are surviving. People who, only if something is there which only I can do or only you can do, that's not going to survive. It will end with me, right? Which I can tell others, I can teach others, I can show others, I can show cases with them. Only those things will survive. Regarding your case, sir, to remove and check for
Actually, the reason why I asked this, just let me re-emphasize my question. The reason I asked is, since you have achieved whatever occlusion, what you have desired by the end, and you remove your wire, and you hold the brackets with your loose ligature wire, figure of 8, and you leave it for 2 or 3 months so that the PDL settle down with masticatory forces, and you don't have, long-term relapse or faster relapse. I think this is what I had read. I think Thomas Mulligan, I think Common Sense Orthodontics by Mulligan. Yeah. Yeah. So is
this philosophy, what you are telling, that is there in, if you read recent books by Dr. McLaughlin and Bennett, they also tell all these things. But again, it depends upon what type of malocclusion patient presented with.
Okay.
I cannot tell you everything about it because suppose if it's a case of class 3 where proclination was there, correct, and you have removed the wire in the lower part and you have not given any retention, right, and remove the wire in the upper also, and the patient still presents with lower lip sucking habit. Next day only you will start seeing that overjet is being created. Now if I want to place a newer wire and I know once I get an increased overjet, I am going to take months altogether to revert back. And sometimes what happens, if my extraction space is lost, it's an irreversible damage done. Right? So I won't prefer telling others all these things until unless I know the case. If I know the case, you can do many things, sir. Like I'll give you an example, sir, that we have tried a same technique of Dr. Mulligan in an diastema case, where we used to remove the wire and we used to check if diastema is closing on its own or not. And believe me, sir, that diastema closed. It was our own student, and it is retaining without any retention since last, I think, 4 years. 4 years, nothing happened because she was a dental student. I used to see her every time smiling, no diastema. So again, because it was a diagnosis done at a proper time and a proper technique was followed, it was functioning for one case. But I cannot do all these things in all other cases. Only one case was tried. And that too, because we want to try during our student days.
Excellent. Excellent. And you spoke about, heating the Australian wire, that is the AJ Wilcock wire, and heat it, and that becomes softer. Is it? I didn't know this point. This is, you have to just heat it completely for how many minutes? Is there any specific temperature or something you have to?
Nothing, sir. Visual thing. You have to see it red hot.
Okay.
But it should be red hot completely. It's not just Australian wire. You can use your normal stainless steel wire also.
Okay, right.
We were having Australian, so we were exploiting it.
Okay. And you spoke about fixed retainers. Is it advisable to give V-shaped fixed retainers so that flossing becomes much easy? Because I tried, explaining to the lab guy regarding a V-shaped retainer. So V-shape is on the lingual side, it goes V. So when you give a single,
that is given in cases of parodontally compromised dentition.
Yeah, but don't you think even in a healthy dentition also it is advisable because flossing becomes much easy?
First thing is, if you want to floss really, you can do this much, and there are different techniques. Even with retainer in place, you can do flossing. Second thing is, if you are that much concerned, there are different water picks available. You can use those water picks. And what I think is, if the wire span is small, it will be better tolerated by the patient. Less chances of it coming out.
Yeah, correct.
The wire is in a zigzag pattern, and food accumulation and all, everything will be more unnecessary problems. Maybe you can try in patients, and you'll get to know.
I did try that V shape, but unfortunately the lab guy could not understand what I was asking for. Then I had to make one.
Chair side, sir. It will hardly take some time.
Honestly speaking, I'm very lazy to sit and do that near chair side. Honestly speaking, I think one.
We never used to give, like I personally never gave any appliance to any lab technician. Immediately, I used to cut that Australian wire, heat it in 2 minutes. By the time I'm just moving my chair from here to there, that wire should be there in my hand.
Okay.
And I have shown you my spring. That spring is already made with, and I just place it over there here. It like within 5 minutes, maybe less than that, patient should be out. So it comes with practice. Maybe if you try, it will start happening.
Great. And I think this is out of topic question. I think cases in India, cases in US, and cases in Middle East vary from 2 years to 5 years and 7 years. And I think Dr. Zahir would agree on this. I think Saudi Arabia, you have cases nothing less than 4 to 5 years.
5 years.
I didn't get what duration of treatment.
I mean to say a normal adult orthodontic case, to finish an adult orthodontic case, default whatever case it is, you might take 2 to 3 years in India to finish a case. But in different countries, particularly Saudi Arabia or other countries, in Saudi Arabia in particularly, they take around 4 to 5 years. Is it because patients don't turn up, or is it because doctors don't turn up? Doctors here, I think I just wanted to ask, this is out of topic. So I thought you have worked in both the continents actually. So I wanted to ask this.
I've seen extreme here. I think Dr. Zubair will be surprised if I say, I recently finished a case. The case was started, okay, when the patient came, he was a teenager, okay, and now his daughter is coming for orthodontic treatment, and the brace is still on. I had to like, what's happening, it's like we did whatever, I had to send him to surgery, oral surgery. We did I think it's all depend on the in some cases maybe it's the patient how he responds, but I think majority of the cases I would say the fault lies with the orthodontist. If the case goes more than beyond 3 years, that means you're missing something. You're not understanding what is happening with the patient, or sometimes what I see the problem here is a very slow and kind of what we call as a lazy attitude. Suppose a patient comes with a broken bracket. What this is, they don't fix it, because if we see it, we fix it then and there. They'll give another appointment, and then one appointment only bracket is fixed, the wire is not changed. Then again they bring it, and then it goes on. And some problems come from the patient aspect as well, missing appointment. But most of the cases, the chronic cases, what I have seen here is poor planning, not diagnosing properly, and most of the time the fault lies with the clinician, because what I see, the patients, they are interested to finish the case. They are coming, they are they have a trust. But I think irrespective of the race, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say, whether it is like different region wise. For example, Europeans may respond a little bit different to the forces when compared to African race, when compared to Asian. That factor is there, but if it is beyond a certain limit, I think the clinician should be introspecting, what he's doing, whether it is right or whether he has to take help. Sometimes what happens, I think the clinicians, they're scared to take help. Anybody can get stuck. It's not that everybody has to have a perfect occlusion every time, but not seeking help when you're stuck and not understanding. And if you have a difficult patient, better to debond and just send him off rather than carrying for like ages and ages and ages.
Right. And one more query, Dr. Zubair. Now imagine you have consultants coming to a GP practice, and the orthodontist finishes the case, puts the retainer and goes away. And the orthodontist doesn't turn up for 6 months or 8 months down the line. What should be the GP doing in his follow-up when the patient comes to him? What he should be seeing and what he should be doing to the appliance?
See, if such things are happening, you have to, I gave one clinical tip already. You have 4 things. Your GP has nothing to do with it. When the orthodontist is giving, make sure he is giving fixed retainer. Even if he wants to charge for fixed retainer, you can take one impression, send it to the lab, give a tray, get in the same lab, you can get one removable appliance, Holly type of appliance, deliver it to the patient. Simple.
But
Start
unlikely,
with the first thing only.
yeah.
You hardly have to spend some money.
Yeah.
Even if that orthodontist doesn't come to you, doesn't matter.
Unlikely, I don't know how is the other states or other countries dealing with. Most of the orthodontists fail to give fixed retainers. They rely only on removable retainers, what I have
Even
seen.
if they are not giving fixed retainers, you rely on having one more removable Holly retainer with you with a pair of casts, give it to the patient. 2 casts and 1 removable appliance, you give it to the patient. Even if the patient is having any problem in wearing that thing, tell them to wear this appliance for some days, get that cast back and get it, again, a new tray can be fabricated. If they are
Okay, so-
losing everything, then they are responsible. You can tell, see, I have given you everything, now you have lost, it's your responsibility. Simple.
So we don't have to check the appliance at all. We don't have to tighten since it is passive. We don't have to.
You have to check few things, sir. You have to check if the appliance is loose or not. If the appliance is loose, you have to consult orthodontist immediately that if it's required to be removed or you can again replace it. Don't replace it until unless you show the person who has done it, because they will be knowing few more things about that particular case, what happened during the treatment. That's why I'm not telling you to completely remove it or fix it over there. Depends
right.
upon what treatment we started with.
Right.
Sir, one more
Bhaskar bhai,
point I want to add, sir, your previous question, that treatment in Saudi Arabia and all, they takes more time as compared to in India. Correct, na, sir? Now, one scientific reason I can give you, sir. Actually, 2 reasons I can give you.
wow, great. Tell me.
One scientific reason could be, you know that most of the Indians are anemic.
Okay.
Okay. When the person is anemic, means blood supply is not there or efficient supply is not there. When I'm not having efficient supply, obviously my tissues and cells, they will be less stronger as compared to the other people who are having healthier diet. That means my bone density is less. When my bone density is less, obviously tooth movement will be easier.
Is there any article supporting this, or is it your?
I'm giving you a reason, but I can think of.
A reason. You're just okay. Your personal reason on this. Okay. Okay.
Indians are deficient in vitamin D. Indians are deficient in, like they are anemic. Saudi people, I don't know how their bone density are, because racial
They are
differences.
much weaker. They are much weaker than the Indian race. Zahir, vitamin D.
I mean bone density. Bone density of Indians is not of very high quality.
Right.
If you see Africans, their bone density is good quality. Second thing is about such cases who are where spaces are not closing and all, we have to check for medication. If they are taking some medication which they are not mentioning us. Sometimes if they are using some different type of medication, where like adults, they sometimes take medicine for osteoporosis. I don't know if it's still there or not. You have to ask for medicine history if they are taking any medicines. I think may or may not be there. For that, I have to go to Saudi.
No. What we're seeing here is the medical reasons. I mean, we have the medical cases, but if it is like routine healthy patient, where the cases are being prolonged more than like many years. I mean, that's what the pattern. I mean, a lot of patients comes to me. They already had 2 sets of orthodontic treatment. You know, one for 4 years, one for 3 years, and then they're coming to me, and I'm still seeing there's overjet. You know, there's extraction pieces is still there.
If a case is already orthodontically treated once, coming back to you, and you see that tooth movement is not happening, or first thing is, if 2 times treatment has already happened, first thing is you don't attempt any orthodontic movement, major orthodontic movement. Go for surgical ones. Explain patient properly. Go for surgery. No orthodontic treatment, because what happens when we give jiggling forces to teeth, they'll stop responding.
I mean, that's what.
First move him here, then here. Third time when I'll try, it won't move.
I mean, that's what they get referred to us for the surgical options. I mean, the
surgery. Don't consider surgery as something different. Tell patient, motivate them properly. Go ahead with all minor surgery, major surgeries, whatever it is. But make sure your surgeon is compatible enough.
Right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Zahir. Thanks, Dr. Zahir. I think I'm done. I had few. We'll take this conversation on the GDP again. Back to Dr. Ali. Thanks a lot. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, one more question is there. One more question is there by Dr. Asia Taranum. She said that, I don't know, she said shed some light on artificial braces and aesthetic braces. Artificial braces. This is the question actually it has come.
Aesthetic braces.
Yeah. Aesthetic braces.
I think she means 6 months braces, Dr. Zohaib.
Oh,
Short-term
okay.
braces. Yeah, that's what I understand.
Understood.
No, I think that's what she meant. What she meant was people who ask for braces just for the fashion statement. As a fashion statement. Short-term braces are different.
Huh.
I think fashion statement is people who find it, you know, I probably would put it across as peer pressure, you know, although they probably would have beautiful aligned teeth. Unfortunately, they may not, you know the importance or know the significance of it, but prefer to have it just because their auntie, uncle, or friends or, you know, peers have it. So I think that's what she meant, aesthetic braces. And patients just want it for fashion. I think short-term orthodontics, that's a completely different scenario. I would like somebody, I would like one of you guys to present a talk on that.
I think Dr. Zahir can shed some light, because these braces are quite in fashion in Middle East actually.
UK also.
Okay, I'm not sure about UK, but I had a lot of patients, you know, they wanted those braces just for fun and just for show. Dr. Zahir, you have those in your setups?
I think what Nadeem is talking about is aesthetic braces, and what Dr. Basha is talking about is short-term orthodontics. I think short-term orthodontics is a craze in the UK, but we've the General Dental Council has brought it, come down really hard on failures and stuff, because I've got specialists who work with me, and they've been trying to rectify a lot of things. That's a completely different topic for us to discuss. So I'd just like this addressed at the moment about aesthetic braces, if possible, please. And I'd also ask, you know, one of the esteemed orthodontists here to prepare on short-term orthodontics, so we can all have some enlightenment on it.
Sir, I'd like to add on both topics. First, I'll tell about ceramic brackets, aesthetic brackets. In my opinion, metal brackets, labily placed, PEA ones are the best.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't, particularly, I don't use any hi-fi copper titanium or niobium wire and all. I use plain, sometimes coaxial wire, sometimes NiTi 1 or 2 wires, and a few wires. So maybe my armamentarium is hardly anything, and I can manage all types of possible malocclusions, whatever you can think of. So those things you just have, all our marketing gimmicks. Coming to ceramic brackets, obviously, if you want your, if you are practicing in a place where adult cases are more, obviously they will be asking for aesthetic brackets, ceramic brackets of very high quality, which I have not used. They are as costly as 25,000 or something. My patients doesn't pay that much. I can't use. So those brackets, but what I got to know, they are very brittle. They break off very easily. So very easily it comes out also. So what happens? The case which we are thinking will finish in 6 months, 9 months, it prolongs. So you have to, even if you want to use such type of brackets, you can go ahead, you can use it. They'll produce more or less the same results. Sometimes torquing becomes problematic, but again, there are, if you know how to handle, like we use one different type of torquing auxiliary also. Even if my bracket is inefficient in doing all these things, I can do in different way. So it depends what type of approach you are having, and you can use any type of bracket. Even angle bracket, you can give good results. Obviously, compromise as compared to, as I mentioned, steel brackets labely placed, but near normal results you can give.
I think the it's about the artificial braces. What I can see is nowadays you get a metal wire. You know, we just go to any dentist and just fix it. It's not a brace actually, but it looks like a brace. I think that's the fashion thing now. You know, where the patients don't pay for the braces as such, but they have like artificial, like a tooth jewel. It's like a 3 to 3. So they just have like a one block. That's what you can get it, and then they put it just as a fashion statement. I mean, it all again depends on whether it is good or bad. It depends on how it fits, or like anything. You know,
I can give you one more idea for it, sir. Yeah. People, if they are coming to you asking for that, placing brackets without any reason should not be done. According to me, it should not be done. all these things which are available, and they are creating some problem to the, if I am putting anything on enamel, it's a damage. I am creating some damage.
Irreversible
such-
damage.
So,
if such cases are coming to me, what I can do is I'll take an impression and I'll send it to my lab. In lab, I'll tell to place 3 to 3 brackets, and I'll tell them to place, to make a retainer thing, same invisible retainer, and I'll give it to them 3 to 3 over.
That will be better.
The bracket will be embedded in that tray.
It's
Okay, and I can place some, I can ask them only to place some adhesive over there so that it doesn't come out. They can use it as a removable appliance. I'm not hurting the patient.
absolutely. I think I agree with you. I think you never do orthodontics if it's not required. And I think this aesthetic, flimsy, if I would call that flimsy kind of retainers.
all this,
Yeah.
and there is a market for that. The people are
I
actually
know, I understand. Yeah.
sell, and it's like having a clip-on smile. You remember the people who they have this same thing, the clip-on orthodontics. They just go
Oh, clip-on veneers. I mean, yeah, yes, it's a bit of a
Something similar you can
Facebook craze. Like I think Fayaz wants to speak. Basha bhai, you wanted to say something before I unmute Fayaz?
No. Please go ahead.
Fayaz, you're in. Can you speak, please?
Yeah. Yeah, very nice discussion in detail. Actually, I just wanted to make 2 quick points. That's regarding, the bone density of this part of the world, the Middle East and the India, because I've worked in both the places and I work a lot with the bone here. What I see is the quality of the bone is really good here. I don't see much of periodontal cases when I'm doing the replacement of implants. So because the dietary products are very good in their formative years here, definitely the bone quality is very good. I see, cases where in India, I've seen cases, a lot of cases, at least 50% of cases we take up, they have periodontal problems. The bone quality is so poor. Things like that, but at least in this part of the world, definitely the bone quality is definitely is very good. And regarding one more point, just now you guys were discussing about this braces. A lot of people here, the hospital I practice, they finish the orthodontic treatment and they come back to me, and as Dr. Zuhaib was telling, enamel will get spoiled, and at the end of the day they want to correct their teeth and look good, but the color will not improve. So they come and ask us. So what we do is I do a lot of snap-on smiles. It's called party wear smile, where we do those retainers kind of thing, but we give a bleach shade, the milky white shade, which is just can't see, but they want like that. So I do a lot of snap-on smiles after the orthodontic treatment. So they wear it and they just go it. It's like we call it as a party wear smile basically here, or a removable Hollywood smile. So those are the 2 points.
On another day, Fayaz would give us a talk on that, and also the drawbacks of it. More than trying to say how beautiful it looks on a patient, I would like to hear the failures and the drawbacks on that, because there's a lot of studies on that as well. I think Fayaz could give us a talk on that. That would be great.
Yeah, regarding the snap-on smile, definitely I will speak. I have made one for myself also, just to see how it looks and how it feels.
I would like to hear the failures more, Fayaz, rather than the success.
Definitely. We'll have both the aspects. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think I will mute Fayaz now. Anybody wants to add anything else before we conclude this session? Basha bhai, anything you'd like to say?
Nothing. Yes. No, everything is very good. Thank you, Dr. Zuhaib. Thank you, Dr. Zahir. It was very kind of you to give your time. It was very generous of you. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Retention is a very important part, and especially it becomes a headache for the general practitioners after the orthodontic, if the orthodontists don't follow the case. And thank you for the tips given by you. It will be very helpful for the GDP group. And over to you, Dr. Ali.
Well, thank you, Dr. Basha bhai. Thank you, the speaker, Zohaib. You've refreshed my orthodontic a part of my brain today. I mean, unfortunately, it's not something I enjoy much, but today I must admit it was wonderful. Your clinical tips are amazing, and especially the tip where you try to place the permanent retainers using your innovation or invention, I would say, with that little coil spring. Thank you, Zahiruddin Fayaz ji. I mean, it was a pleasure having you with us today. Anybody has any questions, and if people, I think a lot of people have missed today's talk. I think something very wonderful and essential talk today, purely clinically oriented. So what we're going to do is we're going to post the recording on our YouTube channel. If anybody has any queries, please see it and then post your questions. If anyone who's missed out on asking questions, please continue on the GDP website. Jazakallah khair. I will be concluding the meeting. Thank you all. Have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Zuhair.
No.